What is going on, guys? Thank you so much for joining me again on the Musket YouTube channel to talk all things Patriots as they move on from week 5 to week 6, looking ahead at the Houston Texans, who will be coming to town this Sunday afternoon. It's not going to be an easy one, but there's a lot going on since their disappointing loss to the Dolphins last week. And we're going to talk about it because the state of the New England Patriots is quite different than it was at this point last week. So there is a lot to discuss. And let's talk about some of the I guess this is still a big story this week, but not the obvious story that you would assume that would be the first thing to talk about today. And that is that the Texans placed Nico Collins on IR before their game against the Patriots, and that's quite a big deal for the Patriots defense. Got a piece up about it on musketfire.com. It's a huge win for them because he has been phenomenal this season. He is clearly CJ Stroud's number one guy, and I'm actually going to look up his stats this year because I don't have those pulled up right in front of me. So they're still going to have, they have good receivers anyway. They still have Tank Dell, but he has had a little bit of a slow start because of injury as well. So if we're looking, Nico Collins has been quite a force. He already is leading the league with 567 yards on 32 receptions. He has 3 touchdowns. He's averaging 113 yards per game, which also leads the league. So this is a huge win for a depleted Patriots secondary, specifically because Kyle Duggar is probably not going to be suiting up. We know that Jabril Peppers is not going to be suiting up. And Marte Mapu played fairly well in his season debut last week against the Dolphins, but still, he's not Jabril Peppers, he's not Kyle Duggar. So it's going to be it would have been a lot for Christian Gonzalez, Marcus Jones, Jonathan Jones, Mapu, Del Pettis, whoever they have out there replacing those 2 captains. So this is going to be a huge win for them. But then we still have to account for Stephon Diggs. Now that he's not in the division, he is on the Texans, and so I would assume he's going to easily move into that role in Nico's absence. So, the Patriots have been pretty good about shutting him down, at least when he was with the Bills. It's going to be a little bit different because now they have CJ Stroud and they have Dalton Schultz, who is also probably going to see an increase in reps. So it's going to be quite a day for the defense, but if they're hoping to have a better showing than they have so far this season, I can't believe I'm doing this. I can't believe I started this video with my microphone so far away. Anyway, maybe I should start all over again because you guys might not have even been able to hear me. I did not realize that this was such a mess. But let's go over those stats again. So Nico Collins, he has 567 yards on 32 receptions so far this season. He has 3 touchdowns, leading the league in yards and yards per game, which is 113.4. So a big win for the Patriots defense that is seeing a depletion because of all the injuries and the legal issues that are ensuing right now. So definitely going to see, I assume, Christian Gonzalez lining up to defend Stephon Diggs now that he is in Houston instead of Buffalo. And they're going to definitely have to account for him. They're going to have to account for, I would also believe, Dalton Schultz is going to see an increase in usage this week. Tank Dell has had a little bit of a slow season because he was dealing with injury. I'm going to look up his stats really quick because I don't know those off the top of my head. He's had not the same weapon that he was last year, at least showing to be last year. He does have 137 yards on 13 receptions, no touchdowns though. So I would say, they're in better hands with Nico Collins not in this game, but you don't want to ignore Tank Dell because we saw what he could do last year, and you don't want to just assume that he is having a slow year and that he's not going to do anything. So it will be interesting to see how the defense continues to be able to make up for the loss of Kyle Duggar and for Peppers. Marte Mapu definitely took over like the captain spot for the secondary last week, and he did a really good job with that. So hopefully that can continue because the Patriots are only going to be facing stiffer competition as the season progresses. And it's really critical that they're able to kind of lock these players down in their absence, because we don't know when Kyle Duggar is going to be back, and we don't know if Jabril Peppers is going to come back. His legal issues are not set to be taken to court until late next month, and he was placed on the commissioner's exempt list this morning. So it's possible that we will not see him back until after that, unless whatever is going on is resolved before that, which is a possibility. But definitely cannot bank on, getting help from in the secondary anytime soon. So that cannot be at the top of the list right now. We also need to talk about the David Andrews injury update. So we saw him miss his first game against the Dolphins last week after missing a lot of the game before that. And we have Nick Leverett in his spot, which is not... if you watch the preseason, you know that the Patriots did not really have solid backup centers, which, I mean, not a lot of teams are going to anyway, because, it's not... Usually if you have your center, that's your guy. You don't really plan for them to get injured. So, so they did not have a good showing through the preseason whatsoever. They did keep Nick Leverett, and so he's there. There's also talk about Cole Strange when he's able to come back, that maybe he will take over reps under center because he has taken them before, so he has some of that experience. But we don't know when that's going to happen and when Cole Strange is going to come back. There's hope that it'll be sooner rather than later, but again, not something that you can really bank on and wait for. So Nick Leverett is going to continue there, but Andrews gave us a bit of an update on his shoulder. He let fans know that he tore his rotator cuff again, similar to the injury he sustained in 2021 when he tore it off the bone. This time he just messed with the meat, is what he said, like the muscles and stuff on the inside of his rotator cuff. And he will be undergoing a surgery that is meant to what's the word? It's like hoping that the muscle will kind of like regrow on its own. And he said that it is the best situation to allow him to continue playing football, because he plans on coming back in 2025. But it is a little bit scary to hear that it's a little bit experimental and that there's not a guarantee, that he gets the surgery and once he heals, he's going to be fine. A little bit nerve-wracking because the Patriots already need a starting left tackle, because that is a huge issue. They might need to find another guard or two. We're not sure. So adding center to the list is definitely not something that they need right now. And losing not just a solid player like Andrews and missing his production on the field, also the fact that he is the most tenured Patriot and a longtime captain, that would be a huge loss to the locker room. And for how many players that they have been losing that are the old school, the Bill Belichick type of guys over the last few years, it would be huge to lose Andrews. So hopefully that's not the case. We'll have to pay attention to his podcast with Brian Hoyer so that he can kind of give us all the updates and whatnot. It was really nice to see him on the sideline last week. Same thing with Jawan Bentley. He's been around at practice and whatnot. It'd be really cool if that would continue, because I think it's really important this year to keep that going. They've lost so many captains to injuries, and having them around and just being there to be able to speak to the team and mentor them, whatnot, just bringing the good vibes, I think is really important, especially with all the rumors about what's going on in the locker room. So It'll be cool if we can see Andrews around for sure. What is up, Chris? Thank you for being here. You should have been here at the beginning. Oh my God, it was a hot mess. I can't believe I did that. I was like talking to the computer and my microphone was all the way over here. I don't know what I was thinking, but it happens, I guess. So getting back to Nick Leverett, as I said, you could kind of tell that there was going to be some problems with the backup centers if they needed them this year. And unfortunately, we found out in week 4 that, yes, the Patriots were going to need one of their backup centers. And last week was the 5th offensive line grouping that the Patriots put out on the field to start the game. So that was 5 different ones in 5 weeks. And the expectation is that they will remain the group this week, which is phenomenal. Even though there were some problems, it's fantastic that they're going to be able to keep this group going. And maybe this will be the group moving forward, which, if that's the case, hopefully they're going to continue to get better, because they actually really weren't that bad last week. We saw some of those really bad hits on Jacoby. There was that one that made me a little bit nervous, and I think some other fans got a little nervous because he was a little bit slower to get up than he had been. But as far as how they have looked how they looked last week compared to how they looked the rest of the season, last week wasn't that bad. The main problem was Nick Leverett, which I guess you can give him a little bit of grace because he is a backup center. This was his first game, but he allowed 10 pressures according to PFF. That was by far the most. It was double, 2.5 times more than everybody else on the team, which was Mike Onwenu, who allowed 4. Everybody else allowed 2 or less, with only Vidarian Lowe, ironically, not allowing a single pressure at left tackle. So that is huge. And it's a big talking point now that we know that Drake May is going to be the starter. And I understand the arguments, because I was actually going back and forth with some people on Twitter this morning about people being nervous to put Drake May, a rookie quarterback, behind this offensive line. And some people think it's ridiculous, and you're totally valid in thinking that. But I think that Jacoby Brissett was being pressured the most, tied for the most this season out of every quarterback. Like, that means that Drake May is going to be facing that as well. The only thing that you can pray about is that his athleticism and his mobility, being so much younger, is going to work in his favor. The fact that he dealt with a really bad offensive line in his 2 years as a starter in college, hopefully that is going to be able to translate into the NFL, and he's going to be able to respond a little bit quicker than Jacoby Brissett did. So we're going to have to pay attention to see what goes on with Nick Leverett. I put up a piece, I think it was this morning, that the Patriots might need to look at some other options if it doesn't improve. And I do think, you can't just immediately bench a guy after one game. But if he continues to be the weak link, then they're going to have to look at some, maybe not the greatest free agents, but their veteran experience and their track record might be a better fit for what they're trying to do, especially with Drake May. The thing that I found the most interesting about this too is Doug Kyde. He listed a bunch of stuff from PFF, and he was saying that Leverett allowed 10 pressures, as I said, which is the most by a center in a single game in the PFF era, which started in 2006. So that'll tell you just how bad it is, because that is 18 years, guys. That's a long time. The only other instance, I guess, of a center allowing 10 pressures was John Sullivan of the Rams in Week 14 versus the 2018 season. I'm sorry. So it's pretty rare for centers to allow more than 4 pressures, and he again did 2.5 times that. So the one good thing is, and I know that people take this with a grain of salt, but I do think that it is worthy of mentioning, when Leverett spoke to reporters, I believe it was on Monday, and maybe it was after the game. I can't remember. But he's very aware of his poor performance, and he was not happy about it. I'm sure he's heard about it all week. If he's on social media, he's definitely seen it. And even though that only goes so far, the acknowledgement and the understanding that you did not play well and you led to a lot of their troubles. Hopefully that is something that is going to fuel him to be better and to improve on what was the worst parts of his performance last week. That might be wishful thinking, but I do think that it's possible we'll see a little bit better of a performance. Maybe not this week, because that defensive line in Houston is no joke. So he's definitely going to have a tall task ahead of him, but we'll see. I'm trying to be hopeful because, that is all that you have at this point. The Patriots are not going to be a great team, probably even with Drake May. But if we can see at least some improvement from the offensive line, it makes it a little bit less scary to think about going into, the 2025 offseason and the amount of positions that they're going to need to deal with in free agency or the draft. So that's just my line of thinking. You don't want to be miserable 24/7, especially as a Patriots fan. So Chris says, as May is going to be the starter, Mayo cannot change his mind for the rest of the season. May has to play out the season. Yes. I kind of feel like this was the plan all along. I think that they wanted to put May out there at some point. I just don't think they thought it was going to be week 5. I think it's hard because I don't want to say that they underestimated how weak the team was, because I don't necessarily think that the team is collectively bad the way that a lot of people do. I think that they have some really good players and in positions of need, and there's just a lot going on, and the vibe is just off. Like, you have one of the best right guards in the league in Mike Onwenu, but you had him at right tackle, and that he doesn't play right tackle that well. Like, he can, which is great, but he's not a right tackle. You're paying him right tackle money to play right guard. And so that was a good switch that we saw last week, and we saw the fruits of that labor. There's a reason why the right side was still being held down, even though Onwenu was moved to his natural position. I think it's gonna be a tough test this week, so I think it's gonna be something that we talk about in just a little bit. But I think that things might not look so good on Sunday, and people are going to have to lower their expectations a bit. It seemed like a lot of people believed that the benching Brissett was going to be what made the team better, infinitely better. Putting May under center is going to make them a playoff caliber team. And I think you can think that if you want, but I would tell you to reconsider it, because I don't think that this is a playoff caliber team right now. And that's okay. They shouldn't be a playoff caliber team right now. We came into the 2024 season knowing that they were going to be rebuilding, knowing that there were going to be growing pains, and that we need to look in the long term and look at the future. And this is just kind of like year 1, under the Gerard Mayo, Drake May era. So, I think that this was the plan. It's happening a lot earlier, I think, than they were expecting. But I don't think May is going to be benched again. It's kind of similar to the situation last year where they kind of waited maybe a little bit too long to bench Mac Jones, but I think it was a sticky situation because you felt like Mac was the better quarterback, and that's why he was named your starter. But you knew if you pulled him, put Bailey Zappi in, and he blew it up, you couldn't then take him out and put Mac Jones back in. Like, what kind of message are you sending to the team, to the fans, to Mac Jones? Like, I think it's just a similar situation, but a little bit of a better situation, obviously. But I totally agree with you, Chris. So since we're talking about Drake May, We know that he was named the starter, which was deemed bittersweet by some of his teammates who spoke to reporters over the last couple of days. It was Antonio Gibson that called it bittersweet. He said, but it's the league. It happens. Everybody's position is in danger. It's never any comfort level. It's just part of the league, so we know how it goes. Jacoby knows we will still support him. Drake is announced as the starter now, and we have to rally behind him. Jonathan Jones also said you could see it coming. It's not a fault of Jacoby. It's just to see if we can get something started. And I think that it's important. This is something that I've even mentioned on Twitter, and I'm kind of considering potentially writing something about it because I think that it's being a little bit overlooked. I understand why people are not thrilled with how Jacoby Brissett performed this year, but I do think that we need to give him credit for what he did do because he didn't come into a necessarily desirable situation, and he worked hard and took a ton of hits, and the fact that he kept getting up, and some of those hits were hard. Like, you didn't even have to be watching the game, you heard it. So the fact that this guy kept getting up, didn't miss a game, I don't even know if he missed any snaps, really. Like, he was an absolute warrior, and that was reflected in May's response to that question today when he spoke to reporters. He said Jacoby is the ideal teammate. He's the ideal guy to be in the room with as a quarterback. I think the biggest thing is you hate it for him. I think Jacoby fought his butt off, got up every time he was getting hit. Not only that, he just kept that mindset of, hey, it's going to be the next play, got this drive coming. Seeing him on the sideline, it was positive vibes he kept and brought to this team. It will still bring to this team. He's a great mentor, a great friend, and I was trying to do everything I can to help him, and I'm sure he'll do the same. So I think that people are kind of forgetting that being on a team, being on an NFL team, yes, you are judged, of course, by the performance that you put out there, especially the quarterback. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be critical of what Jacoby Brissett was doing or was not doing well. But the fact that he has been such a good teammate and he has done so much more than he was probably anticipating he was going to have to endure this year says a lot. The fact that he has been so helpful and being a mentor to Drake May, even knowing that his job was basically on the line every single week, and that was the guy that was going to take the job from him if it came to that. That's huge, because I can't imagine how difficult it must be to be in that position, having a guy basically breathing down your neck every single week, or even hearing, at the end of the preseason, Gerard Mayo say, yeah, May outplayed Brissett, but this is just what we're going with. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. So I think we just need to give Brissett his flowers and appreciate, what he did do. Maybe it's not an ideal situation, and I'm not saying that he's blameless, of course, but there's a lot that goes into being a good member of a roster, and he's certainly proving to be that in a lot of ways to his teammates. So definitely worthy of being recognized in that regard. But another guy that I would assume is going to be in the hot seat a little bit. I mean, it's definitely been a conversation this week, and something that even Mayo was asked about after the bad ending to the game against the Dolphins last week. And that is Alex Van Pelt, who is the new offensive coordinator, the offensive play caller this week. If he is safe from being fired. Okay, so Mayo said that they are not going to even entertain the idea of a potential midseason firing of Alex Van Pelt. So worst case scenario, we're going to have to deal with this play calling all season long, which can get better. I'm not saying that it's been horrific, but we're going to have to see how he improves now that he will have May to work with, because that is definitely a lot different than working with Jacoby Brissett. But he's going to be under the microscope, because if we're already asking this question and we're only in, we're heading into week 6 and people are already asking if your job is at risk, then that means that something is not going well. So, and we definitely saw that. His offensive play calling was questionable last week. This is another article that I got up after the game on musketfire.com if you guys are interested. But when the Patriots got the ball back, time management, first of all, has been a huge issue for them. It was something that Bill Belichick criticized Gerard Mayo over a couple of weeks ago, and it came back to haunt them again against the Dolphins, because when the Patriots got the ball back before halftime, they he had 3 passes on 3 downs instead of running the ball when they only had 22 seconds left in the quarter. Every pass was incomplete. Like, what are we doing? Why did you not burn any time off before the clock? I mean, fortunately, the Dolphins weren't able to do anything before halftime, but that's not, at that time, you don't know that that's what's going to happen, especially when your defense has not been playing lights out like they did a year ago, where you kind of were like, all right, if the team gets the ball back before halftime, it is what it is. Our defense is going to hold them. It doesn't matter. That's not the case this year. So we're going to have to see. I don't even know. We have to see an improvement from Alex Van Pelt. Same issue was abandoning the run game against the Jets. They did it on their first drive, saw a lot of success in it, and then abandoned it for the rest of the game. Even though if you looked at how the Jets defense had been playing up to that point, they were horrible run defenders. They allowed like 180 yards the week before, and it was like every week it was over 100 yards on the ground. So why would you not take advantage of that? Instead, you did the complete opposite. So, that's going to be something we're going to definitely have to pay attention to. I mean, as I said, it's not something that is going to be resolved if it does not get any better, according to Gerard Mayo. So we're going to have to live with whatever he puts out there, but certainly something to watch. I don't know if you guys saw it as well, but Rob Ninkovich, a former Patriots linebacker, he has his own show, his own podcast, and he's already talking about a replacement for Alex Van Pelt. His idea was to bring back Brian Daboll, who used to be with the Patriots on 2 different occasions. He's the current New York Giants head coach, and seemingly in the hot seat again this year, as he has been almost every single season since he's been hired, but especially this year. And if he is let go by New York, he's going to be one of the top free agents next off season. And you would assume, as it is with almost every head coach that gets fired, he's going to be a top candidate to take over as a coordinator somewhere. And that would be an interesting reunion in New England. I wouldn't hate it, because if you look at the last time he was an offensive coordinator before he was a head coach, he was working with Josh Allen, and Josh Allen was peaking when he was calling the shots. So might not be a bad idea. You could maybe even move AVP. This is what happens. Move him back to being just a quarterback's coach, because that is what he was known for. If that doesn't work out, I wouldn't be mad about Brian Daboll potentially. So a name to watch, that's for sure. But that just tells you kind of like the stance of how people are viewing the offense right now. It's not just that they're not producing, it's also the play calling, and that's from former players. It's not just fans that are, griping about something else. So I feel like that's pretty significant. And as I've alluded to quite a bit throughout this past almost half hour, I really do think that things are going to get worse before they get better. And that's kind of how life is too. But I think, as I said earlier, a lot of people think that Drake May is going to come in and he's just going to be the savior of the Patriots and get them back on track. He's going to take them to the playoffs, or he's going to take them further than that. And I think that we need to temper our expectations, other than the fact that he's a rookie and you shouldn't have your expectations that high. He's not coming into the perfect scenario, which doesn't mean, that nothing's going to happen, or that all rookie quarterbacks need to be plopped in with a fantastic offensive line, the best receiving core, tight end, running backs, whatever. I don't mean that. But there's a reason why a lot of things that Jacoby was struggling with went beyond just his performing limitations. So we've also seen it from other quarterbacks, other rookies. Let's talk about Caleb Williams as the main example, the number 1 overall pick for the Chicago Bears, who was kind of put in one of the more ideal scenarios, one of the better teams for a rookie to take over immediately. And he did not play well at the beginning. And there was a lot of talk about if the Bears made a mistake, blah, blah, blah. But as the weeks have gone on, he's definitely looked the part. And I think that might be what happens with May. So Williams played week 1 against the Titans. He went 14 of 29 for 93 yards. That was enough to win. But that was the Titans. Week 2, they played the Texans and they did lose, which is who the Patriots will be playing. He was 23 of 37 for 174 yards and 2 interceptions. Follow that up with another loss to the Colts. The following week, he was 33 of 52 for 363 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. So a massive jump from week 1, bigger jump from week 1, but a big jump from week 2. Week 4 went down a little bit. Also, he was 17 of 23 for 157 in a touchdown in a win over the Rams. Followed that up with another big performance against the Panthers, going 20 of 29 for 304 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's going to ebb and flow. That's just what's going to happen inevitably with Drake May. And I think that people need to better prepare themselves for that, because some people are really just thinking that this is going to be, sunshine and rainbows with Drake May. And I think that we're going to have to give it time. I think that's just the best way to put it. It might look a lot better right away, maybe compared to what Jacoby has been looking like, but got to give him time. He's still a rookie. This is still all going to be new to him. There's a lot of players now that are out there that he didn't get to really practice with that much during the preseason, nor play with them in the preseason. So that's going to be a factor. And the offensive line is dramatically different. The good thing is he did work a lot with Nick Leverett in the preseason. So hopefully that will go a little bit better for him in just the center to quarterback relationship there. But yeah, so I think we're going to have to see and remember exactly what is going on with Caleb Williams. I mean, Jaden Daniels has been playing phenomenal, so that's why I didn't point him out. And we've seen good stuff out of Bo Nix as well, but he was drafted so much further down. I just didn't know I didn't think it was worthy of mentioning that. So, that's all I have to talk about today with the state of the New England Patriots. Might have a pregame on Friday this week, just because my schedule has just been so crazy this week. I'll definitely be coming back to do a post game. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. But otherwise, I will talk to you guys soon. And don't forget, go Pats. Bye, guys.